the most valuable thing you're throwing away every day. What if I told you the most valuable thing you own isn't your money, your house, your career, or even your relationships, but your time? And not time in the vague, poetic sense, but in the brutally real, painfully overlooked sense. Every second that ticks by is a second you will never get back. It's gone, permanently deleted from the hard drive of your life. And yet, most of us treat time like it's infinite. We throw it away like pocket change, like lint, like it costs nothing, but it costs everything. Seneca, the Roman Stoic philosopher, said it best. People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. Let me ask you something that might sting a little. If someone stole an hour of your money every day, would you let them? Probably not. You'd be furious, you'd take legal action, you'd set up boundaries. But when your attention gets stolen for hours at a time by social media, meaningless meetings, mindless scrolling, you don't even blink. It's not just that we waste time, it's that we don't even realize we're doing it. The tragedy is not in losing time, it's in not knowing what you're losing.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Seneca's insight cuts through the noise of self-help and productivity hacks with a sword of clarity. Life is not short, it's just poorly used. We say we don't have time, but the truth is, we don't use time, we let it use us. And the worst part? We convince ourselves this is normal, that time is something to kill or pass. That we're make time later, as if we're gods of chronology. But we're not, we're mortals. And every tick of the clock is a countdown to the end of our story. So the question becomes urgent. What are you doing with your one wild and irreversible life? Here's where I want to shift your perspective, because this isn't just about being productive. This is about being conscious, aware, intentional. Time management, as Seneca frames it, is not about cramming more into your schedule. It's about getting brutally honest about what matters, he writes in On the Shortness of Life. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. That line should haunt you. It haunts me. Because it forces us to look at our lives not through the lens of potential, but of reality. Let's get real. How much of your day is spent on things that truly matter to you? Not just urgent tasks or social obligations, but things that align with your core values, your long-term vision, your soul's actual desires. Most of us can't answer that. We're too busy reacting to life like it's a fire we have to constantly put out. But what if, instead, we treated time as the sacred currency it is? What if we budgeted it like gold, spent it like it was disappearing, because it is? Seneca didn't just preach this, he lived it. He was a statesman, a philosopher, a playwright, a teacher, but he still made time to reflect, to write, to walk in nature, to have deep conversations. Not because he wasn't busy, but because he didn't let busyness steal what mattered. He mastered the art of saying no. And maybe that's the first practical tip we need to learn from him. Say no more often. Say no to what doesn't serve your deeper purpose. Say no to chaos disguised as opportunity. Say no to people who drain your energy. Every no is a yes to your time, your life, your legacy. And this brings us to a painful truth. You don't own your time if you don't control your attention. Time and attention are not separate, they're twins. Where your attention goes, your time follows. If your attention is fragmented, your life will be. If your attention is stolen, your time is wasted. That's why Seneca urges us to live immediately, not later, not after the next notification, but now, this breath, this moment, because this is all there ever is. Let me hit you with a deep question. If your life were audited like a financial account, how much time would be marked spent on meaningless things? And more importantly, what would that number look like if you keep living the way you are now? That's not a rhetorical question, that's your wake-up call. Because here's the paradox. The more you value your time, the more time you seem to have. Not because the minutes change, but because your relationship with those minutes changes. You stop leaking energy, you stop living on autopilot, you become intentional, you become aware, you start making choices instead of excuses. And in that awareness, you gain something most people never experience. Freedom. Not the freedom to do anything you want, but the freedom to do what matters most. Seneca's Stoic time management is not about adding more to your to-do list, it's about subtracting the unnecessary. It's about simplifying your life until only truth remains. You don't need more time, you need less distraction. You don't need to be faster, just more focused. You don't need more hours, you need more presence within the hours you have. You're not busy, you're just addicted to avoiding what matters. Let's dismantle a lie we've all told ourselves. I'm just too busy. It sounds noble, maybe even admirable, like we're in demand, important, relevant. But Seneca would call it what it is, an illusion, a trap, a socially accepted form of self-deception. Because being busy is not the same as being effective. It's not the same as being fulfilled. In fact, more often than not, it's the opposite. We pack our schedules, we overcommit, we multitask, not to accomplish great things, but to avoid uncomfortable truths. We're not busy, we're addicted to avoiding what actually matters. Why? Because what matters is often hard, it's confronting, it's silent, it doesn't give you immediate feedback or dopamine spikes. What matters might be finally starting that book you've always said you'd write, or having that difficult conversation with someone you love, or sitting in stillness and really asking yourself, am I living the life I truly want? Those things are uncomfortable. They require honesty. They require presence. And so, instead, we stay busy. Seneca saw this clearly almost 2,000 years ago. He wrote, "No activity can be successfully pursued by an individual who is preoccupied, since the mind, when distracted, absorbs nothing deeply." Think about that. Distraction isn't just stealing your time, it's hollowing out your experience of life. You're moving, but you're not arriving. You're consuming, but you're not digesting. You're alive, but you're not truly living. We've made distraction a lifestyle, notifications, endless content, constant stimulation. We fear silence because silence brings us back to ourselves. And for many people, that's a terrifying place to be. So we scroll, we binge, we work around the clock, not because we have to, but because we don't know who we are without the noise. But here's what Seneca would ask you. If you're always fleeing from yourself, what are you really building? What kind of life is that? One where you're constantly reacting, constantly consuming, constantly numbing. That's not a life. That's a slow death by distraction. So how do we turn this around? First, we need to reclaim space. That doesn't mean quitting your job or moving to a cabin in the woods. It means carving out moments where you are unreachable by the world and fully reachable by yourself. You need to sit with your thoughts, not just the pleasant ones, but the chaotic, uncomfortable ones. That's where clarity begins. That's where the truth hides. Second, we need to stop glorifying busyness. Busyness is not a badge of honor. It's often a sign of disorganization or lack of focus. A Stoic life is not about doing more, it's about doing less, better. It's about being ruthless with what you allow into your sphere of time and attention. Seneca didn't just talk about this, he modeled it. Despite being a political advisor to Emperor Nero, he found time to write, to reflect, to teach. He didn't let busy become an excuse. He made time for what mattered because he understood that time is not found, it is made. How? Let's get painfully practical. Take a real look at your day. How much of it is spent on what you claim to value? How much of it is spent avoiding the very things that would bring meaning to your life? This is not a productivity hack. This is a spiritual audit. Because the Stoics were not just philosophers. They were surgeons of the soul. They wanted to cut away everything false, everything bloated, everything unessential. And here's the most shocking part. Once you stop avoiding what matters, once you confront it, it loses its power over you. The hard conversation becomes liberating. The creative project becomes energizing. The silence becomes sacred. You stop fearing your life and you start living it. So I challenge you. What are you pretending to be too busy for? What truth are you dodging with your calendar full of noise? What would happen if, just for an hour each day, you stopped running? Seneca would say, you'd begin to live. The true cost of wasted time and why it's the only thing you can't get back. Let's stop pretending that time is this renewable resource we can afford to gamble with. Of all the things in your life, money, possessions, even relationships, time is the only thing you can never reclaim once it's spent. You can rebuild your bank account, you can restore your health, you can repair broken bonds. But time, once it slips through your fingers, it's gone. And yet, paradoxically, it's the thing we treat with the least respect. We guard our passwords, our privacy, our property, but we let time be stolen without resistance, without a fight, sometimes even willingly. Seneca saw this and called it moral blindness. He wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear and like immortals in all that you desire." In other words, we live like we'll never die while simultaneously fearing death. We imagine there will always be more time later, even as we panic at the thought of it running out. But here's the truth. We are all dying, not in the dramatic, cinematic sense, but in the slow, quiet, ticking clock sense. Every day is a withdrawal from your life account, and you don't know how much you have left. This isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to wake you up, because if you don't understand the true cost of wasted time, you'll keep spending it on things that don't matter, with people who don't matter, in ways that leave you empty. And that's not just inefficient, that's tragic. The real cost of wasted time isn't just lost productivity, it's lost meaning. It's the conversation you never had with your father before he passed. It's the book you never wrote that could have changed someone's life. It's the quiet sunrise you missed because you were too busy checking your inbox. It's the years you gave to a career you didn't love because it was safe. Time wasted isn't neutral. It accumulates. It compounds. It forms a regret you carry in your later years, the ache of unlived potential. And the most painful part, you won't always see it happening. Wasted time is often disguised as something socially acceptable. Another meeting, another Netflix episode, another swipe, another task that feels urgent but means nothing. Seneca challenges us to live with urgency. Not panic, not anxiety, but urgency. A calm, focused awareness that this moment matters, that this hour is not just something to get through, but something to inhabit fully. He writes, "While wasting our time hesitating and procrastinating, life goes on." Let that sink in. Life doesn't wait for you to get your act together. It doesn't pause while you figure things out. It moves relentlessly. And if you're not paying attention, you'll wake up one day and realize it's moved without you. So how do we stop wasting time? First, we have to redefine what waste is. It's not just about laziness, it's about misalignment. Time is wasted when it's spent on things that don't align with your values, your purpose, your inner compass. It's not about being constantly busy, it's about being deliberate. A walk with your child, a deep conversation, a few hours spent alone in thought, those are not wastes of time, they are investments. But a day spent reacting instead of deciding, consuming instead of creating, avoiding instead of engaging, that's time you don't get back. Second, we need to practice what the Stoics called memento mori. Remember that you must die, not to be morbid, but to be clear, to strip away the illusion of time abundance. When you remember death, you remember what matters. You stop putting off joy, you stop postponing truth. You stop living like life is a dress rehearsal. That's the gift of mortality. It forces you to prioritize. And prioritization is the foundation of time mastery. Let me ask you something that might change the way you look at your day. If you knew you had just 1 year left to live, not in panic, but in certainty, how would you spend your time differently? Who would you call? What would you stop tolerating? What would you finally begin? The answers to those questions are your real values. They are the compass you've been ignoring. Use them. Live by them. Because time is slipping away. Not next year, not someday, but now. How to master time the Stoic way and finally take back control of your life. If you've made it this far, you already feel it. That quiet urgency building in your chest. That pull to stop drifting and start living with intention. That's the beginning of wisdom. The Stoics didn't just want us to think about time, they wanted us to master it. But not through rigid schedules or color-coded calendars. Their method was deeper. It was about mastering your mind, not just your minutes, because the person who controls their time controls their life, but the person who controls their mind controls time itself. Seneca's Stoic time management starts with a brutal but freeing realization. You don't owe your time to everyone. You owe it to your purpose. You owe it to your values. You owe it to your soul. That means learning to say no. Not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. Every yes to something meaningless is a no to what truly matters. And when you realize that every action is a vote for your future self, you stop living reactively. You become intentional, purposeful, alive. One of the most powerful Stoic practices is reflection. Not just end-of-day journaling, but daily confrontation. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself every morning and night, not to be poetic, but to be precise, to see clearly, to track what mattered and what didn't. This is time mastery, to examine your life so closely, so honestly, that you stop wasting it unconsciously. So start asking yourself each evening, what did I spend my time on today? Did it serve my values? Did it serve my growth? Or was I just trying to escape discomfort again? Another cornerstone of Stoic time mastery is presence. The Stoics weren't about hustle culture, they were about now. Epictetus said, "You are not your past or your future, you are only the decisions you make in this moment." That means stop worrying about lost time. Let go of regret. Regret is just time you're wasting again. The only thing that matters is what you do with what you have left. And you don't need more time to live a meaningful life. You just need to stop trading your attention for things that leave you emptier than before. So, how do you begin to reclaim your time? Start small. Set boundaries around your attention. Schedule silence. Protect your mornings. Cut one meaningless activity per day and replace it with something aligned with your values. A walk, a book, a phone call that matters. Time mastery isn't built in grand gestures, it's carved in tiny decisions repeated ruthlessly. And, finally, remember this: you don't find meaning, you create it. With your time, with your choices, with your presence. You are the sculptor, and your minutes are the marble. Don't waste them, because one day the clock will stop. And what will matter isn't how many hours you had, but how deeply you lived in the ones you were given. I'll go. Live like it counts, because it does.